Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition in our webinar series. In this session we will be exploring Qlik Answers that enables organisations to explore unstructured data. Now you may be able to tell that we're just a tad excited about this latest piece of functionality on the Qlik platform, and we hope that you will be too. Next slide please, Chris. Right, so on the session today you have myself, Neil Thorne. I'm Head of Origination at Ometis, and joining me are three colleagues that many of you will already know well. We have Ometis Managing Director Andy Patrick, Commercial Director Chris Lofthouse, and Operations Director Alex Walker. And looking at the photos, apologies, it looks like I missed the no smiling memo. I'll have to fix that. Next slide, please, Chris. Okay, so before we start, just a little housekeeping. The session is being recorded and will be loaded onto our website and YouTube channel. And during the session, please do feel free to ask questions using the Q&A facility. If I think that the point will add to the discussion at the time, I'll interrupt. Otherwise, I'll leave them for the Q&A session, which will take place after the demonstration. Okay, Chris, next slide, please. All right, so I'm conscious there are a few on the call that may not be aware of Ometis. We're the UK's largest dedicated Qlik partner, and last year we were #1 partner in the UK. We're also Snowflake and Databricks partners, and all of our consultants are Qlik qualified in various areas of the platform. We've got over 25 staff serving, and I think the last count was over 225 customers all across the Qlik platform, through data integration, data governance and quality, through to analytics. We're a one-stop shop for Qlik licenses and added value services such as Qlik consultancy and development, but we also have a dedicated support desk that enables you to talk to one of our team about any Qlik issues you may have. We have an education and learning team that provide instructor-led Qlik training courses in an online classroom. All courses are listed on our website, so please take a look if you want to reinforce your skills or train new personnel. So I bring this slide up at each of these sessions so that you can see which elements of the Qlik Cloud platform we are covering, but also to show you the breadth of that platform. And most of you use the analytics elements of Qlik, but are you aware that the talent acquisition enables data integration, governance and quality, near real-time change data capture for those that need more frequent updates? So it's all there, so do get in touch if you want to learn more on those aspects. I'm now going to hand over to Andy Patrick, who will introduce Qlik Answers and set out why it's needed. Andy.
I'll take myself off mute.
Yeah.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm going to just put some context in place and talk around some basics before we hand over to Chris to actually take us through a presentation of Qlik Answers. I wanted to start off with kind of what is the difference between structured and unstructured data. Many people on the call will already know, but it's worth starting off with some of these basics that we can take you with us on this journey, because we'll get into more acronyms and deeper analysis as we go through. So structured data, as you'll all know, really typically sits within databases. It has to conform to standards of that database. It usually sits in rows and columns, and it's geared up to allow us to do reports and graphical analysis on it. Unstructured data is the data that sits outside of that, and it can still be values in that data, but it's often text-based, and it doesn't conform to a specific schema, and it's often sort of qualitative in nature. This means that it's more flexible, which is great, but it's also harder to manage, or in the past it's certainly been harder to manage. We think about that data that we've got that's sitting in Word documents or PDFs, blog posts, product specifications, sales onboarding material, legal documents, all of that data, that's what we can analyze. And the other big difference really is time and dedication. So for structured data, we've carved out job roles. We've got tools and processes that help many of you on the call understand structured data better. But it's only really now where we can offer you something on that unstructured data, where there's a big push to get value from that unstructured data, that gold that organizations are sitting on. Now, we've been doing this for many years, helping people make better decisions through the use of their data using Qlik, amongst other tools. But what we're talking about today, as Neil's already mentioned, is another part of the Qlik platform that, again, will help enhance that decision-making process and speed it up by utilising that unstructured data. So we know that from research that around 80% of the world's data is unstructured. And whilst organisations strive to have the right systems in place to capture that structured data that I've talked about, the fact is that the unstructured data going through organisations is growing all of the time. And with the investment in AI on the rise, organisations understandably want to capture and leverage that data. And we see this in sort of recent news that you'll have seen on LinkedIn or various publications where the likes of Morgan Stanley, NatWest and others are creating their own kind of internal chatbots to help analysts and workers be more self-sufficient with the questions that they're asking. And this comes with a level of complexity that I'll go into in a little bit more detail shortly. It's worth stating that, it's certainly worth pointing out that what we're talking about today, AI in general, is not an alien concept for Qlik. Some of you guys will be working with this. It's a fundamental pillar of success within the Qlik platform. So if we just look at the Qlik Analytics, we have co-pilot elements within Qlik Sense to help people write set analysis using natural language, for instance, as a prompt. There's AutoML that Qlik has, and that's more of the what we would call traditional AI rather than generative AI, and that's utilizing machine learning capability where we provide historical data for that AutoML tool to predict an outcome. And of course, we've got Insight Advisor as well that is already using an LLM, a large language model, to provide narrative insights back to our users. But as we turn the page on things and we go, and press ahead, we have the capability to provide tangible and explainable insights from your unstructured data in Qlik Answers. So my final slide here just wants to sort of talk about what is Qlik Answers. I'll do a high level overview and then, Chris will take you through the product demonstration. But I talked, earlier about that complexity that comes with sort of, the Morgan Stanley example. And going down this route of building something from scratch here, an organization would have had to invest a lot of time and effort and money to create their own RAG system. So what is RAG? Another one of these acronyms that we'll sort of talk about today, no doubt. It's Retrieval Augmented Generation. The two important aspects of that is really about the retrieval of the data and the generation of the answers from that data. So in creating a RAG system from the ground up, organizations would have had to collect data, curate it, create a retrieval mechanism for that data, create a vector database, index that data to put it into the vector database, fine-tune that process, develop scoring mechanisms around the relevant answers there, connect to large language models, chunk and parse that data, implement logic for how that model combines and synthesizes the retrieval information, and worry about the security of all that data being passed through. That's a lot to say in one breath. There's a lot involved in it, is what I'm saying there. And that's all before you create the front end for users to interact with. And I haven't even touched on the legal and ethical considerations, the maintenance and deployment that you might need around these types of things. And no doubt that would have taken plenty of time and coordination of many people within the organization. Qlik Answers is anything but complex, especially in its use and setup, as you'll see shortly. It's everything that I've just mentioned, though, but it's plug and play. It's up and running and getting value from it within minutes rather than weeks and months. It's like having a friendly, super smart assistant who quickly finds the best sources of information, then crafts an answer specifically and well thought out just for you. And it becomes extremely powerful when the answer to a given question spans several different documents that all need careful consideration. So another thing to mention quickly on Qlik Answers is that it is a full self-service capability with zero code effort. So no technical experience is needed to get up and running with this at all. And it will sit over the top of huge document libraries. So I think it's 50,000 pages that get covered as part of its base offering, and provide those answers to you in a secure environment. So that is what Qlik Answers is at a very high level. And I'm going to ask Chris now to take us through a demonstration of its capabilities.
Perfect. Cheers, Andy. So just going to recap then and take a step back from those slides. So Qlik Answers is a plug and play, highly curated RAG application. So Andy's already mentioned and kind of gone through what a RAG application is. Architecturally, effectively, it sits in between the user and the large language model. So when you're asking a question, it contextualizes that question, and it supports it with the knowledge base that a subject matter expert has provided. Yeah, has provided. And it will only respond based on that knowledge base. So it's not going to use any external data. It's not going to use publicly available information unless you've specifically given it access to that. So it's always in the context of that kind of knowledge base. So this is on the screen. Hopefully you can see it now. The interface, or the standard interface you get through Qlik Cloud. And what's the scenario I've kind of set up is I've passed it my personal banking term and conditions. There's nothing sensitive in there, or at least hope not. But effectively, one of the really good use cases for Qlik Answers is it can help find that needle in the haystack. And commonly, it gets compared to search. It's not search, it's better. Search will respond to keywords and it will rank them. And then typically you have to go into one of the results and then do some further search and try and find the actual chunks of text that you want. Qlik Answers effectively automates that, gives you a highly personalized, summarized response based on multiple supporting documents or pieces of unstructured data. Here you can see that we've got some conversation starters at the bottom, so you can fully configure that. And we will get into the plug and play nature, and we'll set one up from scratch, but I'm just going to focus on one that I've kind of got pre-set up for me. Now, this is to do with banking. So I, as a customer, my local branch is closed down. So I might just want to ask, how can I take my cash out? So I've got some questions here. And typically, it's been sitting there for past the timeout. So I just need to refresh my page. And we'll do that again. Qlik Answers will go away and it will answer that. So again, this is summarized information, and we can see that with the sources in the bottom right-hand corner. So you've got that explainability. This helps build the trust with the RAG application. So here you can see the specific chunks of text that it's used and summarized as part of that. We've got two different sources. So we've got a personal banking terms and conditions PDF. They're kind of generic terms and conditions. And then we've also, if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see here we've got information about my specific account type. So I'm a Premier account holder. And this is blending those two bits of information together to tell me how I can take it out and where I can take it out, but also how much I can take out at any one point in time. If we could compare that to search, so let's say that I've searched on Google or the website of that particular bank. I then get presented a dozen different documents that I can go through. I've got to pick the right one. So there's some guesswork there. If it's electronic documents, I go through, I type in my keyword, and I'm limited to just a few there. And here you can see I've got 15 instances of that keyword across 54 pages. So then I go through and cycle through each of those. I might get to part of the answer. So here I can see where I can take my money out, but it certainly doesn't contain how much I can take out. That's actually in a separate document. So there's lots of different research papers out there by multiple analysts, which they all vary in terms of how much time a company or an individual can save with RAG applications with Gen AI, but they all agree it's multiple hours per week. Some say multiple hours per, as much as multiple hours per day that an individual can save using a Gen AI tool. So there's a lot of efficiency gains. So if you look at this from a business value perspective, this can save countless hours amongst your staff. You can have smaller teams managing the knowledge base and maybe pick out more of the nuanced questions and answer them on a more personable basis. But effectively, you've got an assistant that is available 24/7 and can really answer those kind of low-hanging fruit questions, which are typically high in volume and likely repetitive in nature as well. So it takes the mundane part of that side of it. If you wanted, you could spin this and do an internal use case. So another example would be something along the lines of HR policies. So you could have a HR assistant. Same benefits there. So if you've got hundreds or thousands of staff across multiple territories, you could have a single team that manages that knowledge base, and you can have specific knowledge bases per country, for example. So it's specific to them, but you don't have to have an army or a large team answering the same questions over and over again. There's also a comfort factor there. No question is too stupid from that standpoint. So, and even on the HR side, if you've got a sensitive question that someone doesn't want to ask their manager, so let's say they're thinking about having a baby, you've got paternity policies, they might not want to give that information away as early as they might ask something like a Qlik Answers there as well. I talked about the explainability a bit. So this is the information that is supplied by that SME within the organization about a particular topic. So you've got that kind of guardrails there that it's not going to go outside and try and come up with an answer. So if I ask this one, which is specifically around banking, for example, who won the F1, it's got the power to say it doesn't know, and that is a valuable asset in its own right. It's not going to try and come up with something that might be perceived as truthful when actually there's no overriding guarantee to the accuracy around the answer, like you occasionally get with LLMs, which can what's called hallucinate. So you might hear that term come up quite a bit. So that's one use case that I just wanted to kind of go through. But what we'll do now is we'll focus a bit more on the kind of plug and play aspects and drill into this a little bit more. And we'll do a comparison against an LLM, large language model. So here, what we'll do then, we'll click on create. And when you're creating a Qlik Answers assistant, you need to then first create a knowledge base. So you get two of these different cards here. And we'll go and start with the knowledge base first. I'm just going to call this demo. And I'm going to supply it to my demo space. Now, Qlik, we talked about it being plug and play, so they handle the connectivity side of it. So you've got the freedom to either upload files directly, you can onboard your governed files that might already exist within your Qlik Analytics catalog. You've also got connectivity as well. So you've got multiple different connectors there, everything from like an S3 bucket to your SharePoint, which I imagine will be a common one for people connecting to like PDFs and so forth. Within there, you've got different ways to apply what are called dynamic filters. So if you only want to get those that have been updated after a past date or follow a particular pattern, you can do that. You can set that up. In this case, I am just going to use some data that I've already got within my catalog. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to use this to talk about Qlik Answers, to actually explain what Qlik Answers is and drill into that. So I'm going to use it for a product enablement perspective. So once I've added the two files that I'm interested in, and obviously you've got up to 50,000 pages as part of the base package there, we'll just go and index all of them. So once you've selected the files, you then go ahead and index those. If I expand this out, you can see what has been added, what's pending, and the status of those. You can also schedule this to happen and to update on a regular basis, or you can manually kind of trigger a discover of changes in there as well. So it'll help apply or present those to you as well. Once you've fed it the documents that you're going to use as, to supply the information, you can then create an assistant on top of there. So again, I'm just going to call this demo QA. I did enough waffling there, so it's indexed all my files in time as well. But you can create the assistant before you index them. It's worth mentioning. So now I've got my chat assistants. It's worth noting that you don't have to use this interface. There are APIs available, so you could embed this in something like a WhatsApp or a Microsoft Teams as an example there as well. What we can do here is then start asking questions of it. So in this piece, I actually wanted to kind of compare the output of Qlik Answers, which has been supplied specific information, to Microsoft Copilot. So if I go ahead and ask it, what is Qlik Answers? You can see here it's come up with that summarized response. It's again found this from two different sources, those two PDFs that I've supplied it. So here you can see it's referencing the chunks of text from keymessaging.pdf. And if I go down to the bottom, you can see it's also doing it based on the talk track as well. If we go to Copilot, and remember, an LLM is designed to know a lot of things about everything, and it uses open public information for this. One of the challenges LLMs have, and where they're different to RAG applications, is that they've got the battle of determining which is the most trusted source. They've got a lot of conflicting information out there, and that information will change over time. So it's having to use algorithms, and it sometimes, quite often, gets things wrong. In this case, it's described Qlik Answers particularly well. But if I then go a little bit deeper, and one thing I have noticed when I've asked this, practiced this demo, is it often gives me different results on a regular basis. So one user asking the question versus another, even if they're exactly the same questions. Sometimes it comes up with different responses. So here you can see you've got 2 out of 10 responses, and it's given me one of those in response there. But when I ask it what LLM does Qlik Answers use, here you can see it's describing OpenAI's large language model. This is actually incorrect. So this is something that is plausible. You could think, actually, yeah, that looks about right. It's come up with a LLM, but it's not the one that Qlik Answers uses to power its RAG application. If I go to this document that it suggested the answer came from, this is actually talking about Qlik's OpenAI connectors. So something completely unrelated in the same topic area, but unrelated to Qlik Answers. Now, I've deliberately not given the answer of the LLM to my current assistant here. So if I go and ask this same question, so you've got parity in terms of this, you can see that this information, this content, does not explicitly mention which large language model. So it's there to not spread any misinformation as part of this. Now, as an end user, that's not particularly helpful for me. So going back into the kind of end user seat, I might then want to then feed that back. Now, you don't want people going out of the product, talking to anybody about, oh, this isn't giving me the right answer. You want it to be centralized. So Qlik have built in this review portal where I can feed back there and then, my comments. So I might say, tell me more, whatever it might be. It doesn't matter in this case. But then I can feed that back as a SME of the topic, as an administrator. I can then go ahead and review this within Qlik Cloud. So if I go to the review section, so only those that are permitted to do so with the right privileges will be able to access this. I can go ahead and see what questions have been answered, and in the context of the conversation as well. So here you can see there's a couple of questions that I asked during the demo. I can highlight it. It's already picked out the dislike feedback that I provided it. I can highlight it in that chat. And then once I've responded, either directly to the end user or I've corrected the document, I can go through and mark that as reviewed. Now, it's important to note that Qlik Answers is plug and play. It's minutes to set up, but there is a process that you have to put in, either with Qlik Answers or other applications, to make sure that you're feeding the right information. There's no conflicting information as part of this. The age-old saying of garbage in, garbage out. You need to make sure that you're constantly reviewing this and improving and making sure it's giving correct answers as part of that. If I then want to go ahead and make a change to this, I don't have to start from scratch. I don't have to kind of throw everything I've done so far out the window. It can be as simple as just going through and editing the configuration. So in this case, I want to edit this particular configuration. So this is connected to the catalog, and I'm going to feed it in an additional document, my FAQs, and I can save that document, and then I'll go ahead and index all the different sources. So this can take a couple of minutes to index that. So whilst we wait for that, I just kind of want to recap on what we've done there. So we've, as a business user, someone with no technical skills, we've connected to our knowledge, connected our knowledge base to our source files, our unstructured data, whether that's SharePoint or an uploaded file. So that could be PDF, saved web pages, and so forth. We've then curated that knowledge base, make sure that, put that process in there to make sure that it's all relevant information, it's accurate. It's embeddable, so although we're accessing it via the interface, that could easily be in Teams and using the APIs like I've suggested. You've got explainable answers, so you've got links back to the source document, the source data, and then we've got a full feedback loop, so users can feed back their comments around the answers they get. If I now go back to the chat assistant that we created before, and I'll ask it the same question again: what LLM does Qlik Answers use? And here you can see that it uses Claude 3 by Anthropic. So it's now got that information and it comes back with the answers there. So if I go back and just look at the source that it's given me, you can see it's taken that from the FAQs document there. So a relatively short demo, but hopefully that shows you how easy it is to set up.
What are the questions that came up, Chris, just whilst you're in that area? Can you dynamically add files as and when they land a source folder that you are connecting to?
So you can do pattern recognition on the file name. Absolutely. So you do that as part of the dynamic filters. So you can do that with the if you're using something like a SharePoint, the connectors that I went through previously. Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. So just to kind of recap then, so on today's webinar, we've kind of looked at the customer experience use case. So not only improving the customer experience, making sure they're getting that personalized, summarized view without having to go and digest lots of different pages of information. You've got time saving in terms of being able to support thousands or millions of customers in this example across multiple territories with a single assistant potentially. And then you've got, if I just scooch over to the next page, we did the product enablement there. One thing I'll mention here is these are, use cases that I've explored with various prospects and obviously internally, but it will be different for your organizations. Do feel free to reach out after the webinar and help us build that business case with you and that value proposition. What we have discovered as part of that kind of process, and when we have talked to customers that are far along in their AI journey, so they might have looked at actually building their own in the past, they're spending potentially hundreds of thousands, millions of pounds, not just in infrastructure, but also hiring the expertise needed to support something like a Qlik Answers. So they are having to go through hiring expertise in vector indexing, vector databases, parsing, review management. The list goes on. It's kind of endless. Hopefully what you can see here is with Qlik Answers, you've got a plug and play environment which you can allow the business users to fundamentally own. They can define their process around that. And that should help not just obviously reduce the cost of what an LLM, what a RAG application takes to deliver, but it de-risks that project. It allows you to focus on the data and focus on the business value going forwards as well. And as I say, if you're interested, do reach out. We can work on a trial and a business use case specific to yourselves. And on that note, I was going to hand over to Neil to Q&A.
Back to me. Okay, yeah, we've had a few questions actually come into the chat, and I also got some questions sent to me by people who can't make it. So the first one I've got was, can I run this on premises? Alex, do you want to jump in on that? Or?
Yeah,
different voice.
Q&A at the end. Yeah, different voice. So no, this is a cloud-only solution. That's the simple answer. There's a lot of, with any AI tool, there's a lot of back-end processing, graphic GPUs and things running in the background where scale is really important. And that's what Qlik is offering here to look after all that back-end infrastructure for you. So it's a Qlik cloud-only offering, and I wouldn't expect it to be coming on-prem because of those complexities.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Siobhan has asked, would you need your users to have a Qlik account to use this, or could someone like an operative without an account also use it? So that's probably a bit more commercial one, Chris, isn't it? Oh, either. Go on. Sorry, Alex, I'm going to cut.
That's fine. Well, I don't need to answer all the questions, but yeah. So it depends on what licenses you have in place. If you buy this as a standalone product, you get some licenses included, and some that will give you an allowance for basic users and the like. So it will depend a little bit on your licensing, but the answer would be no. They don't have to have a Qlik account, and they don't have to have a Qlik license to use this. And one of the key use cases, I mean, the interface that Chris showed you there is like the default Qlik interface, but I think the real desire here is to put that in the put that next to the information where you're going to go for it anyway. So actually it already supports embedding out of the box. It's not like something they're going to add later. They're expecting the Qlik assistants to be embedded in your website or in your documentation or your internal knowledge base or those kind of things. So I think there's a real and so therefore you're not going to expect people to log into Qlik first to go to see this. You want it integrated with whatever you're using. So it's more likely to use the kind of the time-based licensing or something like that Qlik offer on various different ways.
Okay. Now, we've had an interesting question from Alex, which I think touched on something, I can't remember who mentioned it before, Andy, I think. Can I point answers at an existing Qlik app so a user could ask what items had customer export in the last 3 months? Now, that is already there, isn't it, really? Isn't that more Insight Advisor?
Yeah, it's Insight Advisor. So yeah, you can do that with Insight Advisor. There's obviously the logical model, which you can help improve, make sure it always gives back more relevant answers. But you do have that already, so that's not a Qlik Answers capability. It's purely unstructured data. But you could do that with something like an Insight Advisor. What What's worth mentioning is Qlik do intend to converge these technologies at some point. It's on the roadmap, but it's not there at the moment.
Okay. How long does it take to get up and running? I was asked.
Well, hopefully I showed how easy it can be.
Yeah.
A lot of this, as with analytics, it can be very, very quick. It can be, I don't want to say minutes, because although it did take minutes there, but it's how long you can get your data in the correct shape. So making sure that those PDFs, that whatever unstructured you're feeding it, unstructured data that you're feeding it, is accurate, is non-conflicting, and relevant for your knowledge base. So it's probably going to be minutes on the kind of technical input side, but the more time is going to be spent on making sure the data is correct, your unstructured data is curated for it to give relevant responses.
Yeah.
And Neil, that's where I think, if I can just chip in quickly, that's where I think when we're talking to customers and they're sort of embarking on a project around generative AI, the outcomes that they want from it need to be aligned to the business objectives. Whilst it might take minutes to set up, you've got to really question, what are we doing this for? How do we want to enable our staff, and how does it align with the business objectives? And then you're going to get the most value out of implementing something like Qlik Answers or a build it from scratch RAG system as well.
Yeah, no, that's fair points. Some of the ones also that I think we've gone through a few of these already, but
and I think it's worth just saying, sorry, on that one, just that curation part is the work here. Like Qlik Answers is amazing, and it's gonna it can be transformative, but there's a lot of work to do. Go into that. It can be work to go into that. Sorry, I used the filtering through the documents to make sure you put the right ones in, like Chris said. And I think you want to make sure you put the right ones in there, and that will be an ongoing task. So that initial cut might take you a minute or a couple of minutes, like Chris showed, but then you're going to need to come back to that on a regular basis to keep it up to date and take on that feedback and so on. So, sorry, Neil, you're going to come up with another question.
No, that's okay. Is this included as part of my existing subscription?
No,
Chris, one for you.
No,
you can answer the awkward ones.
there's no freemium version of Qlik Answers. It is its own SKU. So it's a case of working on that kind of business use case and come up with a value proposition there.
Yeah. Okay. And what else have we got? Are there limits to how many documents I can upload?
So not on the document side, but there are, in the base package, there's 50,000 pages included that can be indexed, and there's 25,000 questions that can be asked per month. And then you can buy obviously additionals of either questions or pages above and beyond that. What's worth mentioning is a page is not a page in your source document. How Qlik interpret it is slightly nuanced. I won't cover it on this call, but effectively it can work in people's favors. So it's based on the number of characters effectively on a page. So if you've got pages with just a few lines of text, you could have multiple pages kind of grouped up into one. Equally, if you've got a page with font 1 and you've got 1 million characters on a single page, that's not going to be a page in Qlik Answers as well.
So don't put it all in font.
Don't try and gamify. Yeah, don't try and game it. It's not in that way.
So this is a question I got when I was talking to somebody about it last week. What's the difference between Qlik Answers and something like ChatGPT? Now, you did talk about that a little, but any more detail on that from any of the three of you?
Security of data as well. So right. I think it's kind of you're feeding your company information into this system as opposed to searching the World Wide Web effectively. So you're going to have more explainable answers. It's going to be company specific. So a good use case example for me is a company that sells hundreds of thousands of different widgets, and there's product specifications around those widgets. The World Wide Web might know a little bit about that from what's been published, blogged about, talked about in forums and so on, but you're going to have the product specification details that you would feed into an answers assistant, and then all of your sales staff could answer those questions that come from the customers quickly and easily. Or, as Alex has mentioned, you put it on your website and open it up for your customers to ask questions on those product specifications and get them buying that product quicker. So it's the security of the data, but it's the answer that it will actually give back to you. Chris mentioned it well. It's not going to tell a lie. It's not going to spread rumors or gossip. It's actually going to give you explainable answers and reference the source documentation where it got those answers from, which I think also answers a question that Ryan has posed as well about where you've got conflicting information. it will look at that as part of its answer, and it will tell you that it has 2 different source documents that are giving these 2 answers to that specific question. So yes, absolutely, it could be used to help to see where you've got differences in your documentation about specific terms and conditions, sales onboarding material, product specifications as well. So if the guys want to add anything else.
Yeah, so just to add to that on the kind of security side of it. So your data doesn't leave your the tenant region, so it's not traveling between different data centers or anything like that. It's not populating other LLMs. Qlik have a no view policy on Qlik Answers, but the whole Qlik platform is a no view policy, so no one's going to be accessing your data other than the organization and the people that they give access to. So yeah, I just wanted to add that as well.
That was one of the other questions actually around security. So yes, thank you. That's answered that one.
And I would just add as well that it's using the same kind of engine. Obviously, we said it uses Claude 3 as the LLM, so it's still an LLM. It's just the ChatGPT front end, uses that engine to look across a much broader set of data, and therefore kind of picks and chooses a bit more amongst that and comes up with its best guess. Whereas Qlik Answers is more built, it's tweaked and tailored for accuracy and reliability and repeatability and those kind of things, as well as all those other points around security and residency and being tailored.
Yeah, and linked to that, so there's another question: is a data curator or stewardship review necessary? So yes would be my guess, but you guys might be able to put a bit more meat on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, so yeah, you do need someone to be the owner of that knowledge base and that data store. So absolutely, yeah, you would have someone defining and then following that kind of process around that knowledge base.
Yeah, and defining the scope of each of your knowledge bases that the assistants are going to use to make sure that they're kind of coherent within themselves. They're broad enough to be kind of interesting and useful, but small enough and contained enough that they're not going to start, confusing things or people. So your terms and conditions for your bank accounts or your product knowledge base and whatever. The idea here is not that you just point it at your company's entire SharePoint environment and say go, and then you start asking questions. That's not what this is targeted at. That's a little bit more like the ChatGPT model, where it would just try and learn what it could from whatever it can find. The idea here is you have that curation role, and if you get a new version of your terms and conditions, you might remove the old one and add the new one in. You might find a way of doing that in an automated fashion through that kind of the dynamic inclusion stuff. So it doesn't need to be kind of a fully manual process enforcing kind of manual reloads or anything like that. But yeah, there will be a role to do that, to keep it up to date, keep it relevant, and to make sure the conflicts aren't arising and responding to that kind of feedback. So it's not we don't want to. It's not it is magic in some ways, if you know what I mean, but it's not like just like set and forget and it's going to do whatever you want and get it right every time. That's for sure not what the pitch is here, but that's not to say that it doesn't bring an amazing amount of value for saving that time on searching, saving that time on compiling information.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time. I've got a couple of minutes left, so Chris, could you just put me on the next slide, please? So as we talk to people, everyone seems to think AI adoption is quite easy and fast, but certainly speaking from experience, we know there's a lot of good practices needed to make it more effective. And so to help with that, we've created a bonus resource with a list of considerations, 10 of them, I think, 8. So if you're thinking about any AI adoption, do keep an eye out for the follow-up email, which we will include this bonus resource in there. We'll also release it on LinkedIn over the coming weeks, I would imagine. Next slide, Chris. So finally, thanks very much for your time today. I hope you found it of value. Do get in touch if you've got any questions or want to understand more. If you don't already, please follow Ometis on LinkedIn, as we release articles and posts regularly using that platform. I think a specific one to today's presentation, if you've got use cases that you want to explore, then please do get in touch, because we'd love to help you out with those if possible. And then a couple of upcoming events to mention. Qlik has asked Ometis again to host a leg of the what it's called the AI Reality Tour this year. Our event will be on the 18th of September at the Burlington Hotel again in Birmingham. So hopefully, easy for many to get to by train, as it is literally a stone's throw from New Street Station, right in the centre of Birmingham. And then secondly, we're very excited to have Sean Rogers who's the CEO of Bark in the US, as a special guest at our next webinar on the day after, actually September the 19th, which he'll be running through a practical approach to adopting AI. So yeah, don't miss out on that one. But other than that, thank you very much for your time. It's been a really interesting topic and one we're very excited about. So hopefully see you on the next one.